When we think of Sweden today, we imagine peace, neutrality, and social harmony. But only a few centuries ago, this northern land stood at the center of one of Europe's most formidable empires, an empire forged from the ashes of the Viking Age that rose to dominate the Baltic Sea and fell in the snow-covered fields of Ukraine. This is the story of Sweden's rise, glory, and fall, from the birth of the kingdom to the Battle of Poltava. By the early 1000s, the Viking Age was coming to an end. Trade replaced raids, Christianity replaced paganism, and small Scandinavian chiefdoms began to coalesce into kingdoms. In Sweden, King Olaf Götkonung, the first Christian king of the Swedes, symbolized this transformation. He minted coins, opened trade routes with Europe, and laid the foundations of a Christian monarchy. But the early Swedish realm was fragile, a patchwork of provinces like Svealand and Götaland, bound more by personal loyalty than centralized power. Through the 12th and 13th centuries, Sweden evolved through feuds, alliances, and gradual unification. Under Birger Jarl, the founder of Stockholm, Sweden finally stabilized. Birger Jarl established new laws, curbed the power of nobles, and built the institutions that would define medieval Swedish society. A kingdom was emerging, yet its independence would soon be tested. By the late 1300s, the Nordic world was in turmoil. Dynastic disputes and foreign pressures threatened the fragile Scandinavian kingdoms. To bring order, Queen Margaret I of Denmark united the three crowns, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, under a single monarch in 1397, creating the Kalmar Union. On paper, this union promised equality. Each kingdom would keep its own laws and identity, united under one ruler. In reality, Denmark dominated the alliance. From Copenhagen, Danish kings controlled trade, taxes, and foreign policy, often at Sweden's expense. Swedish nobles soon grew resentful. They rebelled repeatedly throughout the 15th century under leaders like Elgalbrechtsson, Karl Knutsson Bonde, and Sten Sture the Elder. For decades, Sweden swung between rebellion and submission, between self-rule and union. But something deeper was happening beneath the chaos. Each uprising strengthened the growing sense of Swedish identity, a belief that Sweden should be ruled not by foreign kings, but by Sweden themselves. In 1520, the conflict reached its bloody climax. When Danish King Christian II recaptured Stockholm, he promised amnesty to the defeated Swedes. Instead, he ordered mass executions. Over 80 nobles, clergy, and citizens were beheaded in what became known as the Stockholm bloodbath. The Christian believed he had crushed the resistance. Instead, he had created a legend. One man escaped, a young noble named Gustav Eriksson Vasa. Hunted and exiled, he found refuge among the peasants of Dalarna. From there, he led a national uprising that swept across Sweden. By 1523, the Danes were expelled. Gustav Vasa was crowned King of Sweden, ending the Kalmar Union forever. The dream of Scandinavian unity had collapsed, but a new nation had been born. Sweden was now truly independent and ready to shape its own destiny. Gustav Vasa's reign transformed Sweden from the feudal realm into a centralized monarchy. He broke ties with the Catholic Church, seized its lands, and established a Protestant state loyal to the crown. This reformation brought power and wealth to the monarchy and more efficient bureaucracy. Taxes were standardized and the army professionalized, and the first steps toward the national administration were taken. But Gustav's rule was also authoritarian. He crushed peasant uprisings and kept the nobility in check. Still, his reforms laid the groundwork for the powerful and disciplined state that would dominate Northern Europe in the century to come. When the 1600s arrived, Sweden was ready to look outward, and the Baltic would become soon its empire. When Gustavus Adolphus took the throne in 1611, Sweden was the modest modern kingdom surrounded by powerful neighbors. But the young king dreamed of something greater, Stormaktiden, or the Great Power Era. He revolutionized warfare. His armies moved faster, fought smarter, and used coordinated firepower in ways Europe had never seen before. When the 30 Years' War tore apart Central Europe, Gustavus Adolphus intervened, not just to defend Protestantism, but to secure Sweden's future. His victories at Breitenfeld and Lützen made him a legend, the Lion of the North. Although he died in a battle in 1632, his campaigns had turned Sweden into a European great power. Over the next decades, under Queen Christina and Charles X Gustav, Sweden expanded across the Baltic. It conquered Finland, Estonia, Latvia, parts of northern Germany, and even Denmark's southern provinces. The Baltic Sea became a Swedish lake, the heart of a growing empire. But the cost of greatness was high. Wars drained the treasury and the population. By the late 1600s, Charles XI inherited an empire in crisis. Through strict reforms, he reclaimed noble lands, reorganized taxation, and built one of Europe's first truly professional standing armies, the Karelians, renowned for discipline and courage. Those soldiers would soon march under his son, Charles XII, a boy who would become both hero and a tragedy. In 1700s, three great powers, Russia, Denmark, Norway, and Saxony, Poland-Lithuania, united to crush Sweden once and for all. Their opponent was an 18-year-old king, Charles XII. No one expected him to win, but Charles was no ordinary ruler. Within months, he defeated Denmark, routed the Russians at Narva, and marched across Europe, forcing kings to their knees. His lightning campaigns astonished the continent, but success turned to obsession. Instead of consolidating victory, Charles invaded Russia. As his army marched deeper into enemy territory, supply lines collapsed and a brutal winter set in. At Poltava in 1709, the Swedish army, once the terror of Europe, was destroyed by the forces of Peter the Great. Charles fled into exile in the Ottoman Empire. The empire his ancestors had built was gone. From that moment, Sweden's age as a great power was over. The defeat at Poltava wasn't just the end of a war, it was the end of an era. Russia rose to dominate the north, and Sweden retreated into a smaller, quieter role in European affairs. Yet the legacy of the Swedish Empire endures. It left behind a culture of organization, education, and resilience that shaped the modern Scandinavian world. From the unity of the Kalmar Union to the ambitions of the Vasa kings, from the triumphs of Gustavus Adolphus to the fall of Charles XII, Sweden's story is one of transformation. The Viking spirit did not disappear, it evolved. It built not just ships of war, but a nation that endures to this day. This was the Knights of the Steppe. Thank you for watching.